Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here. Finally out with that Masque video that you all been asking for. Well, rather asking for that I brought up, and there was a lot of votes that went to the Masque video. As I put a poll, and it was between that and the glitters, and over 3/4 of folks decided, hey, can you give us the Masque video first? So here I am delivering that today. And it's going to be kind of a 2-for-1 because I haven't done a custom card video lately. And as you see down here, I actually made a post on Reddit some time ago asking for custom Masque unit ideas. And there was a lot of really cool responses. So I thought, you know what, today I'll go over what you guys put down for custom Masque ideas and use that as a sort of way to lead the discussion on what Masque units we could be getting in the future and what they would do. So getting right back into it, God, 19 days. It's been almost 3 weeks. Wow. So first off, we're starting with a Youthberk Masque, and yeah, I respond to a lot of these because I try to be very responsive on my content. So Akashi 7 Days has for us Night Fallen from Grace Youthberk Masque. So of course, standard stuff you'd expect here. It can only be bred on a grade through the youth. Makes sense. It's what all the masks are like. So the first skill is a Cont on Van, which is that if a rearguard was placed on an occupied rear circle, all units in your front row gets 5,000 power in a turn. It's a Cont skill, thankfully, so you only get 5,000 no matter how many times you do this. Second skill is that when it attacks a Vanguard, it costs to remove a Youthberk in its different name from soul from the game. So it only does it from the soul, and we get why it doesn't, which is look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 2 cards from among them and call them to occupied rear and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So basically what he's done is he's turned this as sort of pseudo Shadow Paladin-esque kind of deck in a sort of a Jewel Knight kind of way where you're calling over preoccupied circles, and it takes a Vanguard centric focus away and puts it into a rearguard centric focus. That's kind of cool, although, and I do like the fact that it utilizes the whole different youth things from the soul, because we got a lot of different Youthberks. The different revolt forms are all Youthberks, so depending on how it's worded, if we did get a Masque youth and it did have an effect based on that, which all the masks seem to have a sort of a persona blasty thing, as it were, which is just removing a base version of themselves, there's a lot of options to choose from. That's really good for it. I don't know if I really like this focus because it completely detracts from the revolt form gimmick. Remember, this is not a revolt form unit. This is an actual youth. This is supposed to be an upgrade to Skyfall arms. So where's the revolt form? That's what I don't like about it. But I think what I would expect from a youth Masque would be the revolt dress ability still, and a stronger version of the previous effect. So for instance, what he has here about removing a youth and looking at top 5 and calling, that might actually not be that far away from what it does. You may in fact be able to remove a youth from the hand soul drop as per usual, and in so doing you can peep top 3 all grade 2 or less, or add it to hand if not. That would be an upgraded form of the effect, and they seem to be doing that with a few of the different effects. For instance, the new Leonor Masque we got was a lot like that. So I think here that would fit as well. As for what the sort of the main effect would be, I think it would allow the ability to revolt dress, but the revolt dress would either only have -1 drive to give you more card economy, or it would give a skill to the unit that you revolt dress into that would allow it to be more devastating or have some sort of other utility. That would be cool. I can also see them taking it a Dragfall Luard kind of direction, where in addition to calling, you can sort of retire when the opponent's rears. It seems like retiring the opponent's rears might be a little bit of a side thing for some of these masks, so I can see it going that way. Overall, though, it's kind of a cool concept, kind of Shadow Paladin, but I think it detracts from what youth is and strays away from the revolt dress gimmick when it kind of doesn't need to. So scrolling down here, next up we've got a Eugene Masque. Yeah, Eugene has been, pun intended, left in the dust because of Gondiva and hasn't really received a lot of relevant support recently. It gets a cool thing here or there, but it's pretty clear that as a deck gimmick, it feels very archaic and undersupported, and people don't seem to be playing Eugene very much, and it's very sad because I do like the concept of Eugene. So, of course, can only be rid on a Eugene. I don't know why he made this an auto effect, but bear with him, right? When it's placed on Van, if you Soul Blast 5 this turn, get a Dragon Tree marker on each of your rears with a rested unit, and this unit gets 10,000 power in a turn. So that's a lot of Dragon Tree markers. I think that's a bit much, but What I do like about this effect is that it takes into account the Soul Blast 5 skill, which is an axe skill. Now, one of the coolest things about Masque gimmicks is that if you have an axe skill on your Vanguard, you can resolve those and then go in the Masque. One of my favorite examples of this is using base Leonor's skill to counterblast one, draw, and call, and then you can do the whole Masque gimmick thing. It gives you more setup and more of a chance to draw into the pieces that you need. I do like that a lot. So it also has a couple of other skills. During your turn, your front row rears get 3k power for each of your opponent's open rears, and then if they have 5 or more open, your Vanguard has drive +1. Wow. On a restand where Oswald be minusing, ooh, I don't know, man. I mean, I know Oswald makes it like 1, but still, that drive in a control deck like this, that's pretty good. And then when it attacks, remove a card with Eugene's card name from your hand, soul, or drop. Stand all of your front row with Dragon Tree markers. Your opponent has no rears. Retire 2 rear guards. Choose a grade 3 for your drop. But it's a lot of stuff. So here's the thing. I think this is a really good example. The Skyfall one up here had kind of this issue too. I wanted to make a note that removing a copy of the Vanguard, like a different named copy, should not be the cost for the main skill. It should be an auxiliary effect that helps you set up and build your plays. With Zorga, that was to either get an order or call a rear. With Biko, that was just to be able to get a drive. It doesn't do the restand or anything. It just gives you the drive and the retire, so it makes you a little bit more devastating. With Leonor, it revives and retires. Your main effect should not be beholden on this, and that's really important because Masque should still be rather independent from their base versions. They use their base versions in a meaningful way, mind you, but they need to be independent from it. That way that when you go into them, you don't need to see those other copies. Your Masque can still function just freaking fine. So that is where I think those kind of designs, they're not really seeing the point with why we have these kind of skills in the first place. Now, I do dig the whole using the axe skill bit and, oh, they have open rears, then you get more, because this doesn't actually retire, it just goes from there, and that can be a little bit of a problem. You see, if Eugene Masque wants to base it based on the number of open rears, that's cool. I like that. I think that makes sense for what Eugene plays. I mean, Oswald needs them to have no rears. Issue though is it should also have some kind of retire skill, because if you don't kill that turn, and you probably won't kill that turn even though Masque is a burst strategy by nature, if they call more rears out there and you don't have the pieces to retire in of itself, and you can't rely on your Vanguard to provide some of that control, you're kind of dead in the water, and that feels really bad. So I don't like it so much. I think if they were to get a Eugene Masque, personally, the way I see it, it would probably have more meaning for using the soul. So you don't use the Soul Blast 5 skill necessarily, or maybe you do just refill your soul, but it has its own Soul Blast effect, because soul is this sort of weird thing where you build a lot of it in Eugene, but it's just a sustained effect that nobody really likes to use all that much. So giving you a different way to use that soul would be really nice. As for the win con, more retires and probably just more scaling of power to those retires. There's already multi-attack in Eugene, and we already have a lot of pretty solid pieces, but it doesn't really close out games that well, so you need some sort of finishing power there. Going down a bit, we've got Cardinal God Orfist Masque. Now, yeah, this is going to be I do really look forward to what we're going to get for an Orfist Masque, because it seems like it's coming, right? We all saw the fight. Well, by the way, if you're watching this but you haven't caught up with the Wildress Season 2 anime and you intend to, please do so before watching this video, because I am going to go over anime spoilers. I know it's a bit late to bring up that disclaimer, but I'm going to bring it up now. So go watch that. Maybe watch my watch-along video series on it. It's shameless self-plug, but yeah, go watch that before watching this, please. So on to the more spoilery stuff. Zaxa, as we know, is now a part of the Uniformers. He's working with them, and it seems pretty likely he's going to get a Masque. So this has got a lot of lore implications with it. I'm interested where they go with it. Some people suppose that they may go the Link Jokery lock kind of thing. I don't personally think they will, but there is the implication there. So, can only be rolled on grade 3 Orfist. Yeah. Auto. When it's placed on Van Circle, choose up to 2 World Order cards from your hand or drop and put in your World Order zone. Yeah, so that's basically Regis, but twice over. That's pretty correct. The second skill is Auto on Van. When this unit attacks, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, remove a card with Orfist and its different card name from soul or drop. I think he meant to say hand there instead of name twice. And counterblast one. So it's a CB and do that, which ooh, that's kind of impressive. That's the first one that actually has an additional cost on top of it. For every 2 world orders in your order zone, call up the 2 Shadow Army token to rear, and they get 10,000 power until end of that battle for every Dragon Tree marker. Third and final effect, Auto on Van. At the end of your turn, retire all of your Shadow Army tokens, and for every 2 Shadow Army tokens retired, retire one of your opponent's rears and draw one. Wow, okay, so here's, wow, I really like a lot of this. He says down here it's 100% broken, and yeah, it's a bit much, buddy. And again, we do have the issue where the main effect is tied to getting rid of an Orfist, but you do have a couple different Orfists you can choose from, so you can make it a little bit more of a burst strategy. I get why they do that, and you still combo with Nuvoria and other stuff like that. It works just fine, I think, with the combos. It's got a lot of synergy. What I want to point out about this is an Orfist Vanguard that actually allows you to use your Shadow Army tokens as a resource. It doesn't simply call them or multi-attack with them. It can also retire your Shadow Army tokens for additional skills. We don't have a lot of that in Orfist, but I really like that because in a more protracted game state, the ability to call Shadow Army tokens can feel a little bit redundant when you have so many ways to get them out. So being able to clear your field for very beneficial effects and then continue next turn and reflood the field is a really good way of going about it. It feels a lot like how Grand Blue or Spike Brothers played. And he was intelligent enough to give the effect to get some draw power here. I like that. Getting draw power and retiring the opponent's rears is a really good way to go about it because Orfist struggles when it comes to hand advantage a lot of the time. You have a lot of offensive pressure, but when the opponent's turn turns around, they're just going to go and smack you upside the head, and it's kind of hard to survive. A really good Orfist player knows how to manage the resources well and keep in the game, but it is still a struggle, and I think helping to round out the defensive and attrition element of the deck is going to be the way to evolve it. And overall, there's a lot of good concepts here. It's excessive as a mother effort, but the concepts here are really solid, and I think this is a pretty good direction to take the Orfist Mask. Again, please don't tie the main skill to this, although he seems to add a counterblast and make it pretty temporary because it is kind of a cracked skill. I do appreciate the need for a Dragon Tree marker. It's a little bit oof. I don't know if that's okay necessarily because that means that you need to see your Dragon Tree wretches on top of that, but it also is kind of cool. I think it's better on things like Keel Severing where it's an auxiliary option, so if you do get full combo in Zorga, you can make use of the Dragon Tree marker, but needing the marker is a little bit much. Masque has already got a lot of pieces around it as it is. You don't want to necessitate more than you have to with it. So we got a Bafsaga mask here. Yeah, another one where if you watch the anime, you already know as well as anyone else that Mireille might get a mask. She isn't a part of uniforms yet. Zoxa actually had to sort of take the fall for her in a sense, so we may not get this, but if we did, it'd be something. So, what does Grim Weeper have to say about Bafsaga Mask? So, of course, going to be written on Bafsaga. Act Van once per turn. Remove a Bafsaga in its name that is different from this unit from your hand, soul, or drop. I love that this is worded very correctly. Choose up to 1 Trick Moon and 1 grade 2 or greater unit from your drop and call him to rear circle. Auto on Van once per turn. And this unit is armed, soul charge 1. Then choose a number of your opponent's rear guards up to the number of armed cards on your Van circle and retire them. Continuous on Van circle. During the battle, this unit attacked while boosted by Trick Moon. This unit gets critical +1. And when your opponent would call cards from hand to Guardian circle, they must call 2 or more at the same time. I love so much what's happening here. I've said for a while that Bafsaga has really cool options for recoverability and control. You can use Bafsaga's wipeout skill as well as Travis's skill to get a lot of retires, and then you mix it with the ability to just constantly bring back units to the field with Aushnium, again, Bafsaga's effect. The issue is that if a really big ass Vanguard with a crit, and I do mean big as hell, your typical numbers in the deck range anywhere from 48 to 58,000 with a critical most of the time. So With that in mind, there's no guard restrict and there's no multi-attack. It is purely 3 attack and a PG or GG type game plan that Bob Sagra has so far. So evolving it would probably entail one of 2 ways. And I'm really glad that they chose the guard restrict way, because it brings more attention to the fact that Bob Sagra is very much a Vanguard centric deck. Rearguard multi-attack feels a bit flavorless and overdone at the moment. So to make it not be multi-attack at all, but still focus on the core of the deck strategy and the winning image is a good way. Now, another good thing about this is the remove Bob Sagra skill is not the main kicker of the effect. It just sets you up. That's good. That's really good. This is interesting because it gives you retires in a different way by when you're arming, and it's only once per turn, which is good. So when you're arming, you can get 2 retires potentially, but you can also only potentially get 1. So at first it's weaker, but then when you get to do the 2 retire thing, it doesn't have to be the front row. It can be any 2 retires. So it's more flexible. And flexibility is actually a theme of some Masque units. We see with Biko that Biko has the flexibility of not requiring you to have bound any critical triggers in order to get the restand. It just scales out the crits. So even though you benefit from bound crits, you're not beholden to it. Additionally, with Leonore and Masque, Leonore can restand any 2 rear guards. So even though it may be easy enough to think, all right, stand both front rows, there are a lot of situations where restanding the column a la Viament's Bruce style is superior because it makes more meaningful numbers in order to push through and pressure. So the versatility in that as well is cool. Zorga even helps with the versatility aspect because its form of Alchemagic allows you to Alchemagic 2 orders with the same name. It doesn't have to be different names anymore. So you can actually make combination with same orders to get double dip into their effects. I like that this as well has that flexibility element behind it. Being tied to Trick Moon is a little bit of a weird thing, especially since I think that it might not make that much sense otherwise, but it could also be kind of cool. You know, sort of how like Blaster Dark Revenger Abyss is tied to RPBDA as well, and they're sort of bound together. These 2 might be bound together even when Bob Sagra falls into the Masque. So overall, really, really cool card here. Feels pretty much like a strict upgrade, which I'm not sure Bushy would actually go for when making the card. They're probably going to make it more side grady, but if they did make this, oh man, I would hella want to play this. But on one last note, the arm cards only equip to the original Bob Sagra. That means you need to find a way to circumvent that by making it be the same name as the OG Bob Sagra or something else to that effect. But I'm not going to whip up on them, you know, that's more Bushy's problem to figure out how to make that work, but the concepts here are fan-freaking-tastic. Okay, so next up, let's go for, oh my god, yeah, these are some kind of crack cards. There are some crack cards that I'm not necessarily going to go over so much because they're very wordy and they're pretty, like, very fan-fiction-y. I want to go over more of the ones that I feel are interesting to me. So, ooh, okay. This is a cool one. So, Abyssal Jeweled Dragon Drawjeweled Masque. So, I want to talk about this one because when I say interest, like, we're talking about, like, Youthberk, which has already been done. This Bastion Masque is based on the Grade 4, and I don't think they're going to do it based on Grade 4 Bastion. They'll do it based on Grade 3 Bastion or anything, so I don't really want to talk about those very much. But this one brings up a talking point with Drawjeweled. Now, as we already know, it's been leaked that Drawjeweled Masque is in fact coming. We saw pack art for it leaked ahead of time, so it is going to be here. And for point of fact, it's probably going to pop up by the time of the season finale. You see the opening, it shows Donji having a card fight with Michiru. So it's probably going to pop up in that kind of hypothetical card fight, which is cool because we also get to see Viament's Bruce again. And probably also see Viament's Bruce lose, unfortunately. But that's theory zoning, and it's not really related directly to this video. So, Abyssal Jeweled Dragon Drawjeweled Masque. Cool name. I like that name a lot. Can only be rid on a Grade 3 Drawjeweled today. Good. Auto advance. When your opponent's unit's power becomes less than its original power, draw a card, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. Auto on Van. When this unit attacks or is attacked, Remove a card with Drawjeweled in its different name from hand, soul, or drop. And Soul Blast 4 cards with different grades. Choose 2 of any fighter's units and exchange their power until end of turn. Power may increase or decrease afterwards. This is a fascinating freaking card. So what we've done here is we've taken the Drawjeweled skill of reducing power, not only make it into a power swap thing, which, let me just say, probably means that a hypothetical support card for this would involve you having a rear guard with 0 power, but it also lets you be a defensive deck. So it evolves the gimmick by the amount of power they lose being not as much, and also the fact that you need to get rid of original Drawjeweleds and Soul Blast 4 different grades just to keep this effect going. It's a bit more inconvenient and it's not quite as powerful, but drawing cards and being able to do it defensively is really, really, really cool. One thing I want to bring up with a Drawjeweled Masque is when you look at the Masque gimmick, right? The Masque card itself, Masque of Hydrogum, and being able to search out the Dragon Tree wretches and get the markers and stuff. Drawjeweled actually kind of benefits from this in an interesting way. Masque of Hydrogum's skill, which lets you superior ride into the Masque units, a part of that skill puts it into Soul. One of the things about Drawjeweled as a deck is that of all the grades it can get into Soul, the only grade that is not guaranteed from Ride Line is grade 3. But Masque of Hydrogum can put itself into the Soul, and it is a grade 3 card. So it makes your ability to Soul Blast 4 very consistent and even a bit loopable, because Masque of Hydrogum can keep on using the effect to ride over. Now, of course, it only does it if your Vanguard is not a Masque, but what you can do to be a bit intelligent about this is you can, if you have it, let's say you're on the Masque Drawjeweled, and you have an original version and another Masque version. Instead of simply Persona riding the Masque version again, you can ride the OG, play the Masque skill to put it into Soul and Persona ride. And since the Drawjeweled can be removed from Soul or hand anyway, you might as well remove it from the Soul. And you still get the Persona ride. The only difference is you gained a grade 3 in the Soul by Masque for free. That's the only difference. It's a cool way that interacts mainly with Dark States decks. It's good. Now, of course, one kind of trippy thing about the Drawjeweled Masque is this guy has 1 power. Yeah, that means that it's going to be really easy to bully. So I don't think they're going to take it that way. I don't even think they're going to really take it in a win is attack. This is a cool concept, but I don't think they'll do that. What I personally think they're going to do with Drawjeweled is one of 2 things. They're either going to take it in a sort of guard restricted kind of way to increase the pressure. For instance, things like Ammon could rip cards from the hand. You could also rip cards. That's the second way. So I think they're going to take it one of those 2 ways. Either rip resources or guard restrict to try and finish the job in a more succinct kind of way. That's what I think. Also, again, removing the Drawjeweled as a part of the main effect, bad. I think you should probably be making this effect a sort of ulterior version or perhaps upgrade to Drawjewel's first skill, which was an act to CB1, Soul Charge 2, and potentially draw. Perhaps what you can do is make it remove, look at the top 3, add 1 to hand, up to 1 to the hand, and put the rest in the Soul. That would be a cool way of doing that. Or maybe even get stuff from Drop Zone into the Soul. Just a more secure way to get the plus and get the Soul anyway, because you're using this kind of very particular, pretty expensive cost. I mean, you're getting rid of a grade 3 from your Soul for criminy's sake in a deck like Drawjeweled. It better be good. So yeah, those are just some of my basic thoughts on it. I really don't want it to be multi-attack either, especially since the deck already has multi-attack. Now, some people have said, oh, well, make Drawjeweled axe skill, right? You know, just make it during the main phase so that all of your attacks will be bullying on a 1k power, well, not 1k, 1 power Vanguard. The problem with that is that your multi-attack no longer works. Rock Argor and the promo both restand mid-battle when you pay the Soul Blaster more cost. So if you can't pay the cost during the battle because you did it during the main phase, those skills are useless, and I don't think that's a good trade-off. So I think they're still going to make it a win this unit attacks kind of skill. Okay, moving on. here's another Eugene. We've already talked a bit about Eugene. One cool thing about this Eugene I wanted to quickly mention is that this one scales more to rest rear guards and using the resting gimmick. So Eugene's skill to rest to is what's important because it gets you more rest, and you also have units like the dinosaur and Ividus that can rest themselves. That is a good, cool way to take Eugene, and it makes the original feel more valid. Going down, okay, here's another Orfist, right? This is another skill where, oh, okay, you can draw and call more Shadow Army tokens. Again, the theme of drawing cards in Orfist Masque seems to be a big one because we need hand advantage in this kind of deck. So we already have this. This shows how dated it is because we already have Ashura Unica as her mask form, which is Ashura Biko, right? So we won't talk about this simply because of that. But needless to say, this is a pretty busted effect. You can, if you want to stop the video right here for a second and read this, you can. It's pretty cracked compared to what we got. Okay, this is an interesting one. Considering the episode that we just got done with, this is a cool idea. So we've got a Seraph Snow mask here, which he didn't give a name because honestly, the name doesn't really quite matter. It's going to be a Seraph Snow mask. So honestly, I kind of agree with Natsu here, which is, let's just be practical about it. It's flavor. It can only be rolled on a Grade 3 Seraph. Cool. Continuous on Van. This unit gains 2k power times the total grade of cards in your prison. And if the total grade is 5 or more, it gains drive +1. An interesting alternative to the Grade 3 Seraph. Act once per turn on Van. Remove a card with Seraph in its name from Soul, drop, or hand. Choose up to one card from your opponent's rear, soul, and drop, and imprison each of them. Auto on Van. When your opponent calls a card from prison, if you have 3 or more in prison, their on-place abilities are nullified. So, this is a very interesting way to take it. For instance, right, this to me, this feels like a superior version of the base Seraph Snow, but not necessarily a power creep to the Grade 4 Seraph. The Grade 4 Seraph is very, very, very cracked and actually works with this, but it's definitely an improvement on the Grade 3 because the power you get here is presumably going to be more depending on what you imprison. It can quickly become a lot more, and after a while, it'll end up being drive +1. Now, there's more counterplay on the opponent's part because they can imprison low-grade units to try and get around this drive, but ideally, they'll probably want to be getting rid of like Grade 0s or whatever. That's not good. It's not good to imprison your triggers. That reduces your shield value. Calling in a rear circle is not good for you. So you might not want to do that, but then you're going to have to suffer the opponent getting triple drive. There's a lot of interactivity there, which is one of the hallmarks of, prison, is that you and the opponent have to really play games with each other. This skill right here is also cool. This is the imprisoning skill. Now you have 2 different kind of Seraph targets to choose from. It's the main skill, and I don't like the whole remove thing, but I mean, at least you have a couple Seraphs to choose from, and you probably don't stay in this for long anyway, so I guess I can give it a pass. But where it gets really trippy is that this third effect sort of puts you into a really cool control option. You can stun the opponent in a way that no other deck really does. Stunning their abilities is fascinating, but it's only the on-place abilities of like the cards that are called, right? So it really comes down to what they're playing, but it is still fascinating. So maybe there are some situations where staying on this might be better, but overall, Grade 4 Seraph Snow is still your finisher. And because that is still your finisher, it really comes into conflict with having a mask version of this Seraph in the first place, because Master is supposed to be burst, right? But you can still do it. The only order you really need to play in Seraph is the prison, and that's a Grade 1 order. You play it immediately, so it doesn't really interfere if you played the mask afterwards. And there's a lot of infrastructure to try and get orders, so you can loop the mask anyway and get Persona Ride going. That is pretty cool. So yeah, there's some pretty good potential here. You could also try to make it a combo with the Grade 4 in more of a sense by maybe forcing them to commit more, so that Seraph's effect to suck in 6 will be more complete. But either way, there's a lot of interactivity and thought here, and it does feel like a cool middle ground between the 2 Seraphs. So overall, yeah, this is a really well designed unit. Another Bob Sagra mask. we've already talked a bit about the Bafsaga one. The only thing I will say is that this particular Bafsaga mask kind of opts to just have a skill which forces it to equip the arms, and it also can equip up to 4. That's pretty cracked. If this was the way they took it, I would immediately play multiple shields if I was allowed to have multiple shields, because multiple instances of 10k guard for free during the opponent's turn is cracked. Youthberk Masque. This one I am going to talk about because it's a little bit more to the point, which is that revolve dress. The unit at the end of the battle, this unit attacked. Choose a revolve form. Brightest stand gets drive -1, and Dragon Tree markers are active during your turn, and front row units gain plus 5k. So the Dragon Tree markers are active didn't really need to happen because this is a mask form anyway, but I get the point, which is that the 5k and the -1 drive, it's a bit more pressure. That's pretty goddamn strong. Now, the other effect is remove a youth that's different from it. So in other words, just remove any of the revolve dresses or the Skyfall arms and add a revolve dress from deck or drop to the hand. Thankfully, you can't loop the revolve forms because you're removing them, but still, immediately adding revolve forms to the hand is that's mind-blowing. That is a hell of an upgrade. So they could try to take it this way, but this is just a good example of trying to evolve on the gimmicks in a way. It's a bit too powerful in my opinion. I think they're going to hold off in a couple capacities here, but this gives you more of an idea of what I was thinking about anyway. Not that what I was thinking about is really like the end-all be-all, right? I'm just another guy. This has a lot of cracked effects, so I don't think it really bears a lot of mentioning. Guys like, hey, yeah, support please, which it's coming soon. Okay. This was super duper like over the top. This is an example of not really what to do in a sense, because he did a grade 3 Bastion, which I want to talk about, but it's like all the lower grades just become grade 3s, and like you're turning off the gimmick, and then it does like all this like restand, rewrite stuff. Like it just kind of falls out of the idea. If they were to do a Bastion mask, right, you have to find a way to either interact with or supersede grade 4 Bastion. Now, one way you could do it is by making it into a tanky deck, giving like 10k shield to all of your grade 3s so that it can tank more, and then still give it like some sort of multi-attack, but maybe not quite as strong. You can also take it the other way, where you can grant power to all of your grade 3 units, like maybe 5k to the front row or something, and it just adds more to the burst strategy, and trying to make it more easy to do it that way. One benefit of Bastion Masque is you're running grade 3s. Regular Bastion, when it does its effect, needs to drive check a grade 3 specifically, not a grade 3 or greater. So drive tracking Apex sucks, but drive tracking Bastion Masque still works with it, so that's a nice little benefit there. I don't know where to take it, honestly. Bastion has been so entrenched with the identity of Prime that it's hard to see it in any other way, and that alone makes me think it might not even happen in the first place. But if they did make it happen, well then yeah, either make it tanky or just give it an easier way to do the multi-attack that Bastion Prime does, a little bit weaker, or maybe weaker over time, but still really good if you're trying to be quick, because Bastion is a bit slow right now. So just speed it up, which is what a lot of masks do anyway. Okay, so this is these are kind of these are a couple of lyrical stuff. Now, I like the idea of lyrical support, but these are like lyrical masks, and I don't think they're going to get masks right now. They're getting their own alt forms anyway, so that almost is certain they're not getting masks. So I'm not really going to talk about these so much, but this guy put a lot of effort into these effects, and I like these effects a lot. So give them a read right here, because they are really cool. Okay, where I did the Drawjeweled stuff, right? But do admit that it is kind of neat how he integrates this effect, which is put 2 cards from your drop into soul. If they have different grades, draw a card. You see, that's one more I'm talking about. It's a superior version of the previous effect. So clears the mask again. It's lyrical stuff. Can't really do much with that. Another Eugene mask. This one is pretty cool in that it has like a multi-attack sort of thing about calling from top of the deck and the rear, and it's like an evolution of Eugene's call from deck ability, but as a multi-attack. But at the same time, it's also just part of the rearguard multi-attack. They think we only should have so many masks that do that because it gets bland after a while, right? But maybe that's the uniformist thing. One crack thing, he says, oh, all your front row gets 2k for each of your opponent's open rear circle. So it's almost Lawkeeper-y in a sense, how Dragonic Lawkeeper does it, where it's like, ah, yeah, we're going to get powerful as frick if you don't invest. Hey, Youthberk Voidfall Arms. Oh, yeah, this, like, if you want some fan fiction land kind of effect, this one's crazy. It, like, arms a Griffogila from deck as an arms order to it. Enough said. Lilfa, again, just a mask that's like lyrical, so it doesn't really work. This is a Orfist mask, but look at all these effects. It's pretty wordy, but again, it retires Shadow Army tokens as a resource, so that's cool. And on top of that, it also has this lock card thing. So this is a part, this guy was in the camp of, oh yeah, add in the link trigger element and give it locks. Messiah already gives us locks, but it also gets rid of those locks afterwards. So I don't think Bushy's really quite ready to commit to just straight up locking. So that's why I'm a little bit on the other camp of it not doing that. But I mean, hey, you know, it is a cool concept nonetheless. Flagberg mask. Okay, so this is my boy Nabs right here. So I already know about this one a bit. So let's talk about Flagberg mask because this can definitely happen. It can only be rolled on a grade 3 of Flagberg's name. Auto once per turn on Van. When it attacks a Vanguard, counterblast when to remove a Flagberg in its different card name, yada yada. Perform all the effects below based on the number of attacks you made this turn. So again, you're really beholden on getting rid of the other flags. So this, you may not be able to do this very much. You may only be able to do this like once or twice in the game, and not even back to back, depending on whether you can see your other flags. 3 or more. This unit gets drive +1 until end of turn. 4 or more. Your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand, calls it a Guardian Circle. Nora was chosen and is sent to the drop instead. 5 or more. This unit gets 10,000 power and end of turn. At the end of the battle, stand this unit gets drive -2. So okay, this basically has a little bit of the other flag stuff of, oh yeah, you know, it kind of rips cards from the opponent and it gets power, but now it's a restand instead. Again, people really think restands are kind of like uninspired, but I think it actually is kind of cool here because, you know, it feels like how V Maelstrom was with the restands or how Tetra Drive was with the restands. You know, this is the Aqua Force-y kind of thing, and so far, we only had the rear guard multi-attacks, but now we can get sort of a Vanguard multi-attack going with the Aqua Force kind of aesthetic, and that has happened before. I don't mind that at all. I think that is, it's almost kind of about time to get that, to be frank, and this does it in kind of a cool way. You get more resources with this, it's kind of pressuring, but it's not super duper oppressive. After all, you do rip, it does rip too, and it kind of forces the opponent to rip 2 no matter what. That is pretty cracked, but this is going to be happening turn after turn after turn. It seems like it's kind of hard. You can also CB deny it, so it just goes boom, and if it doesn't kill the opponent in turn or 2, it's just like it kind of just fizzles out, which is sort of what flag is anyway. So I like it. I think it feels reminiscent of the restanding tier dragons that we would get with a lot of different Aqua Force stats. So yeah, this feels kind of cool. Overlord the Mask. I mean, I don't think encounter decks are really gonna get mass, and I don't really feel like talking about this one. I mean, this is kind of a neat idea, but it just doesn't really feel that, you know, in tune with what we're probably gonna get. So again, these are supposed to guide the discussion, but if I don't think these are really a part of where I think it's gonna go, then I'd rather not discuss it. So, Autocratic Lord, Grandfia Mask. Now, this is a cool one. I really dig the idea that, you know, Grandfia might get masked at some point, and that's one of the evolutions. Astra Vico is already a thing. And before long, we may see the same thing with Vanguard and Grandfia. So, this guy has a lot of text about just a lot of different stuff. But if you can decipher through it, this is, I'm going to highlight this. This is what is actually the card text. So it can only be wrote on a grade 3 Grandfia. Done. Continues on Van. All of your front row gets 2k for each of your Noblesse Rose tokens plant gauge. That's good. Act on Van. Soul Blast 2. Or choose a card with the Grandfia and its different card name hand and remove it. That's the first time that it's a substitute for another cost. That's interesting. Call up to 1 Noblesse Rose token to your middle, back row, center, rear, and call up to 2 plant tokens. Then, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets crit +1. At the end of the battle that it attacked, if you have 1 or more Noblesse Rose token plant gauges, put 1 or more to the drop or remove it from the game. Choose one of your rear guards, and it gets 5k power until you each put in the drop for this cost, and then restand all of your front row rear guards. Then you can restand all front row rear guards if you did 5 or more. So you have to sort of go all in with this one. I think with this one, because you can build so many plant gauges, it is a bit too powerful, but it juggles a lot of different concepts, right? Getting the crit to the van is cool for pressure because they may be inclined to just take your Vanguard a lot of the time, so this makes it less likely that they can, so it's going to be more of a PG or GG me kind of thing, a la Bob Saga. Another cool concept is more restands to the front row. It's a little bit bland, but it comes with the stipulation of dropping 5 or more, so you have to drop 5 or more. And you still only choose one of the rear guards to get the power, so the other one's going to be kind of weak as frick, so I don't think they're going to go that way with it, but the crit pressure is kind of cool, and I think the crit pressure is nice. Also, probably the coolest concept that came from this is twofold. One, you're getting an alternative cost to the Grandfia thing, so this effect can happen a lot, but you're better be willing to pay the soul cost if you don't have the Grandfia there, so it's more of just footing the bill for you than actually being the necessary cost. This is the other cool concept. Scaling to the gauges is really nice because if you know you're not playing against a retire deck, what you can do is you can turn it into a situation of swing rear, rear, van, rear, and getting the front row buff helps make your other rears not feel so frail, and it also incentivizes you to maximize the gimmick. Because you could be like, oh, only put in like 3 or 5 and then just get rid of it, including token, and you know, that's your entire cost, just want token again next turn. But now, if you can make more, you may want to make more in order to potentially hit better numbers. But it can also come at the cost that if your opponent does have a way of getting rid of it, then you may screw the pooch and you lost a lot of gauges. So it's a higher risk, higher reward kind of thing, and it makes a lot of sense. I think this effect here is the really, really cool effect overall, and this as well is just kind of has an interesting quandary. So a lot of good stuff going on with this Grandfia. Where do I think they're going to go with it? Personally, it could go either way, but I think they're going to go with more this idea and maybe get a crit going. So it's a lot like what our friend here is talking about. They're kind of cooking with this one, not going to lie. All right. Yeah, I also made a Drawjeweled mask. You know, I did a guard restrict because, like I said before, I think guard restrict is the way that they're going to go with it, but that's just me personally. This is the Leonore mask. We already know what Leonore mask does, but it's still kind of a cool concept. Oh, it is kind of busted though. Felty mask, yeah. Lyrical Monasterio, already gave the explanation, and that's about it. So overall, there's a lot of cool concepts here, but the tenets seem to be pretty similar. There's a couple of basic rules, which is the ride thing and removing a base version. Removing the base version should be an auxiliary effect, not a main effect. That's another rule. Another thing on top of that is the idea of settler benefits and quality of life updates, like we saw with Zorga and how it does Alka Magic, Biko, and how it relates to bound, crits, etc., etc. So quality of life is good. Also, being able to make the original feel valid when possible with their act effects is a cool touch. It's not really necessary, but it is a cool touch. And just at the end of the day, making sure that it feels like something that the deck can use. It's not over the top, but it can use it. Now, one card that's not on here that I want to talk about is the Greedon one, right? I'm surprised no one talked about Greedon, but I think Greedon mask would have been really, really, really cool, right? You, for instance, can keep the same basic effect of having a Greedon in Soul in order to have 7 more damage be what you lose, and you'd be like, but Godsman, you want to remove base copies. And yeah, you see, that's where it's like you can have an effect to remove a base copy to perhaps, I don't know, call rears from Soul or Soul Charge more or something like that. You could do stuff, but it comes at the risk of, hey, you lose out on that effect. So it's sort of a higher risk, higher reward kind of thing, and Greedon's kind of a gambling man, right? That's kind of his gimmick, so I do like that, but still, maintaining that is very synergistic. What I think a Greedon mask would end up doing is that it would probably have a restand that's, you know, a little less powerful, might even have a counterblast to it, but it sucks up less rear guards, maybe only like 2 or 3. That way, it's easier to have like the rear guards be able to do attacks in as well, and it makes sense because oftentimes when you're doing the mask gimmick, you're doing the persona ride, so you already have persona ride numbers anyway. So you can do that, and when you're doing that, you also don't need to invest as much on the field. It's more cost efficient because you're already having to go through hoops and hurdles to get the mask cards in there and ride into it. If you have to try and call a bunch of rears on top of that, it gets way too cumbersome. You don't want to freaking do it. So, yeah, try to make things a little bit easier and streamlined if you're trying to do a Greedon mask. Lore-wise, I don't think it's going to happen because Shinobu seems to be resistant to change, as Michu was talking about, so it's probably going to be the opposite. If anything, we're going to get an alt form Greedon instead of a mask Greedon, which that's his whole other can of worms. I don't know where they're going to go with that. But those are just my thoughts on that one, because I really wanted to bring that up real quick in the discussion. But that aside, if there's anything that you guys thought about these cards or effects, what predictions you have for Masque, or maybe other patterns that you've noticed with the cards that I didn't bring up here, feel free to let me know all about that in the comment section below. This is a really, really cool moment in Standard. It feels like the reverse all over again, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it gives us the much needed sort of energy boost to try and get into the format and get invested in the anime as well. So here we are. We're in the Masque era. Let's try to make the best of it. I'm enjoying it, and I hope you guys too are enjoying it because we're all along for the ride. And if you did like this video, well, I've got other discussion videos, particularly the glitter one should be right after this being uploaded, so look forward to that. Also, I'm doing a watch-along series with Whale Dress, which you probably already know about, but if you're up to date with the anime but haven't watched my series, consider perhaps watching my reaction series, and, you know, it's a lot of fun over there, you know? I try my best with that. But that aside, it's not your cup of tea. Well, don't worry. We've got fight videos, tier lists, top 10 vids, a lot of different stuff. So go ahead, check it out. And if you like what you see, consider leaving a subscribe down in the leave us. I always English bad at the end of videos. Why do I do that? Consider leaving a subscribe and turn on that notification bell for the next time that I upload a video. And with that, take care. God bless.